Yeah. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Toby Tichtenbach, and I'm the director of the Holocaust Resource Center in Buffalo. This evening, our guest is Ursula Noritelski Weinrieb, who was born in Germany and moved to Amsterdam. Her story is a story of courage and resistance in the face of the tyranny of the Nazis. Ursula, would you tell us about your childhood in Germany and how you came to move to Amsterdam?
Well, I was born in 1919 in Berlin, and I had a happy childhood. I had two sisters and parents and a big family, uncles and aunts and grandparents. And I went to school there, and until I was about 11, 12, things looked pretty good. But then the Nazi regime made us, I couldn't go to the school that I wanted to go anymore.
They forced you out of school?
Out of the school, I went to the Lyceum in Berlin, and I had to leave that. Went to another, back to the elementary school for maybe 2-3 months, and my father got very desperate, and we just left Berlin and went to the Netherlands.
He just left his business?
He didn't have a business anymore. He gave this kind of, everything fell apart because of, you could see already, he could tell what was going to happen. It was very
And this was even before
devastating.
Kristallnacht?
Yes,
He was
yes.
very clever man to anticipate.
He was very scared, and so he just thought when these people, started to talk about what they think that where the Jews should wind up, he thought he has nothing to do there anymore.
But why the Netherlands? Why did he take the family to the Netherlands?
Well, he knew Amsterdam from business.
Oh, I see. So it was a natural course for him to go there.
Right. And so we spent about 7 years of freedom in the Netherlands.
You got to the Netherlands in what year?
1933.
1933. And life was comparatively good in Amsterdam then for you?
Well, it was very hard.
Economically, I
Economically, very hard. We didn't have too much money when we came there, and things were hard. We had 3. My mother had another child there.
Oh, a new baby.
New baby, and my father, and we were all still in school.
So
I was only
who was your family? You had sisters and brothers, 2 of each?
Had.
Oh, here we have a picture of your family in Germany, your grandparents. Would you tell us who else is in the picture?
Well, these are my grandparents in the back, and my parents on each side, and I'm in the middle with, and my little sister on the arms of some kind of a maid, yeah.
So these are happy days in Germany. This is before Amsterdam.
Oh yeah, this was.
And then
ready.
the other 2 children were brothers or sisters?
No, I had another sister.
Another sister, and the baby?
And the baby came much later in Amsterdam. A boy. We were 3 sisters.
Oh, here we have another picture. Would you tell us about this one?
Well, this is a family picture of a wedding. The youngest brother of my father got married, and this was the picture. And most of these people that are there have not survived the Nazis.
So this wedding took place in Berlin?
In Berlin in 1927, I think.
So you're a little girl here. I think you showed us that you're in the front.
I'm in the front, closing my eyes for the flashlights.
And only 4 people from this entire wedding scene survived.
Right.
So you are in the Netherlands. Where are your grandparents, incidentally? Did they go to the Netherlands with you?
No, they stayed in Berlin, and my grandmother came to visit in 1935, and she died there. She got a heart attack in Amsterdam. She's buried. In fact, I
went
to the grave just now.
And your grandfather stayed in Berlin?
And my grandfather later also came to Amsterdam and lived with us from about 1936, 37, around this time, until Hitler. And also Hitler took him and
He died in the
in a
camps?
concentration in Sobibor.
Oh, in Sobibor he died.
Mhm.
So would you tell us?
He was 82 when they took him.
Oh, but that's very sad. Would you tell us what happened when the Nazis came to Amsterdam? What was the scene like?
Well, it seemed they came in 1940. They occupied the country. They started, actually, the first real devastating thing happened in the beginning of 1942 when they took about 40 young Jewish boys and sent the ashes 6 weeks later to their parents. Just like this. This was the first very, very
Devastating is the proper word.
right.
So the Jewish community became very alarmed, I presume.
They came alarmed, but they were kind of powerless because they had us all registered.
Did you have to wear the star?
And you had to wear the star. And I don't even know what was the reason that they did this first big, terrible thing, you know, with these young boys. And then after this, they started to take people out of the houses by names and just one by one. 100,000 Jews in Amsterdam.
How did it affect your family specifically?
Well, I lost everybody.
Well, what happened in 42? Were you still in school?
No, I was already married then.
You were married in, oh, that's right, you told me in 1941. Here's a picture of you and your
Right.
husband
Right.
outside of City Hall in
Yeah,
1941.
we were still hopeful that
For a
things
normal
might,
life.
yes. But shortly after that, in 42, we had to go into hiding.
Perhaps you'll tell us
We
about
were very,
that.
very fortunate that just some miracle happened, and a friend of my husband's brother who said she knows a place and she knew somebody who took us to a place in the southern part of Netherlands in a little village.
Is this the family
These are
who
the
sheltered
people.
you? Will
Yeah.
you tell us about this family?
Well, this family was a very devoted and wonderful people, and they just felt terrible that they couldn't save the rest of my family.
So they took you and your husband? They're Christians, aren't they? And I see they had quite a brood themselves. They had three
And three
children.
little children.
Did you pay them for staying in the house?
Well, we did pay them, but because they were poor, they actually didn't do it for money.
They were really Christian. They were
That's right.
humanitarians. So you stayed there from 1942 to 1945?
Yes.
And how did they hide you from the Nazis? Weren't the townspeople suspicious?
No, there was a lot of them did know about it, and they just would never tell anybody because there were hardly any. This was a small village, and people didn't. If they thought we were Jews, they wouldn't care. But we had false papers. You know, we didn't really tell them that we were Jews. We had papers.
Did they know you were Jewish, the farmer and his wife?
Oh yes,
They knew you were
they
Jewish.
Knew.
Yes.
But the other people, some of them knew, my close neighbors knew, and they were helping a lot. Because these people were very poor, actually. And sometimes even with money, you couldn't buy anything there. So the neighbors around, they bought food and everything else.
And shared it with the family?
Yeah,
What did you and your husband do when you lived with the family?
mostly nothing. That was the worst thing.
That must have been terrible.
My husband was practically really hiding, I think. He was really hiding. I got out. I used to go out and I did some sewing for people sometimes and earned some food this way and things, you know, some little extras that we could permit ourselves and shared with our people that were so kind to us.
Did you keep in touch with your family back in Amsterdam?
We had no connection with I didn't have any more family. My family was already transported to Auschwitz.
Well, you went to tell us the name of the family who survived you so we could refer to the...
Mr. and Mrs. Tyson.
Mr. and Mrs. Tyson. When you went to Mr. and Mrs. Tyson...
My parents were gone already.
That was 1942, and how were they taken away, Ursula?
Well, they just came to the houses and just told them to come, and that's it.
Oh, so they went in the general roundup with your
The general
sisters.
roundup, outside. My middle sister went first with her husband, and then the rest of them.
And were you already hidden? Were you and Leo already hidden?
No, we weren't hidden yet.
Well, how did you escape from the Nazis, from that roll call?
Well, it's a story. My husband was like working for the Jewish, how do you call this?
The Jewish community, the Kehila?
Yeah, something like that. No, it's called different. The people that, oh gosh, I can't.
Well, that's all right. So he was working for the Jewish community.
Yes, and somehow because of this, they were able to protect him so that he wouldn't, because he was needed. He was needed to round up the Jews. That's
Oh, I
what they-
suppose it was like the Judenrat.
Judenrat, that's
Yes,
right. He
yes.
worked for the Judenrat.
Judenrat,
So he had some kind of a little paper that made him
an exemption.
an exemption for a little while only. But that was pretty soon over too.
Yeah, I was just going to say the
So,
Judenrat was
dissolved.
ultimately dissolved and rounded
Anyway,
up.
and that's when we went into hiding.
So you went into hiding and it was very difficult. You were there for 3 years?
Well, it was 2.5 because we were liberated a little earlier than the rest of the Netherlands. We were liberated in November 44.
Oh, that was earlier.
Yes.
And who liberated that?
The
village?
English army.
So what did you do at that time, Ursula?
At that time,
In
we
November
just,
1944, did you go back to Amsterdam?
no, you couldn't
It
because there was
wasn't
it was still war going on. The German was still in Amsterdam. Just that little part
Just
was
that
free.
little,
Yeah.
that section there.
Mm-hmm.
And then when were you able to go back to Amsterdam? In 1945, in May or June of
Well,
45?
it was later, maybe. It was like in the late fall of 45. We went back.
Did you suffer from hunger during these 3 years?
No, we had enough to eat because these people, there was an organization, the priests and some the town from that little village of people, they were all aware that there were more Jews in this area, which I wasn't aware of.
Oh, you didn't know? You thought they were members of the families, is that it?
Right, and there were people that were just taking care of these Jews that were hiding in that area.
Were any of these people lauded at Yad Vashem as righteous
Yes,
Gentiles?
there's a man, his name is Pete Arts. He's now in his early 90s.
Oh,
And he
my.
was very
So-
much honored.
And a tree was planted in his honor?
Yes, and also he's at the Yad Vashem.
Also
Not
your
only
family?
Yad Vashem, but this other thing, the Street of the Righteous.
Oh,
Quite a
the
few.
garden, in
Yeah.
the garden there.
Yeah.
And
It's the
and was
street.
your family also honored? Your family, the
My
family?
family, I've just put into the Street of the Righteous, which is very important.
The Avenue of the Just, that's
Yeah,
it,
that's
the
right.
Avenue of the Just.
Mhm.
Are you in touch? Are you still in touch with your family, with your Dutch family?
Yes, I'm with the children. The parents passed away. The mother passed away. I called her mother.
Yes, sure.
She passed
was
away.
like your mother.
She passed away about 2.5 years ago.
And the father?
Well, he died earlier. He had this terrible, unlucky thing happen to him. 2 days after liberation, he walked on a mine and lost a leg.
Oh my.
And but he lived for about quite a while after the war, but I didn't get to see him anymore. My oldest son went to see him when he was 22.
It must have been
He
a
went
very
to see.
beautiful reunion.
He went to see the people that have hidden us, because that's what he wanted.
That's
he
what
wanted
he
to
wanted.
visit them. Hmm.
What happened to you and your husband when you came? I presume you came back to Amsterdam in the
Yes.
summer of 1945?
There was the fall of 1945. Yes.
And what did you do then, Ursula?
Well, my husband had a business before, and some of it he got back. Some people were hiding some of his machines. He was manufacturing leather goods.
I see. So they were kind enough to hide
Yes,
his
and
machinery.
he got permission to start his business again. And that's what he did, he and his father and his brother.
So you were fortunate, not only, of course, to stay alive, but to be together and
Yes.
then to resume your life when you came back.
That was very important, that we were together during
Very.
the war, because I don't think I would have been able morally and emotionally to survive it without my husband, knowing that my whole family was already gone.
I'm sure that you were a strength for each other. When you left and the family had already preceded you, did you get any kind of communication from the family, from the camps? I know sometimes cards came.
Nothing at all. There was one card that a neighbor of my mother kept, and that was a card of my husband, my sister's husband, who must have had the possibility to survive about 3 years in Auschwitz, but he also then perished.
What did the card say?
The card said, "I'm fine, I'm in the orchestra." There was a band in Auschwitz.
In Auschwitz.
And he was a musician. He played quite a few instruments, and they took him in there.
You know, we hear stories about the band playing while the people
And he
went off to work.
Yes, and he was in this band, and he was able, because of that, to survive, but he didn't survive the Death March, going out of Auschwitz.
So he survived so long, and at the
That-
very end,
yes.
was he the
Mm.
last of the family to
I
be
think he
alive?
was the last, because my sisters perished much earlier, as the Red Cross told me. I don't know where that thing is. I think she...
So after the war, you tried to trace your family?
Yes, and I had a piece of paper. I think I gave it to Marlon.
From the Red Cross?
Yeah,
And what did it say?
it gave all the names.
Oh,
and
I
the
see. So
dates.
you submitted the names of your family, and then the Red Cross would reply and tell you what happened or when they were killed?
Right.
So you found out about your entire family that way.
That's
That
right.
must have been
Including my grandfather, and my little brother was 8 years old, and my grandfather was 82.
That must have been quite a shock the day that
Yes,
came.
it took a long, long time to be able to cope with that.
Well, nowadays we hear of reunions of people who haven't seen each other for 40, 50 years. Maybe somebody from your family. Do you have any family in Israel or in the United States?
I have two cousins that survived on that one picture.
Oh, that were
yeah.
two of the four
Yeah.
in that picture.
Mhm.
And where do they live?
They live in Flint, Michigan.
So I presume you see them
Oh yes,
and you're
we
in
do
touch.
see each other. Mm-hmm.
Did your children think it was strange that they were raised without aunts and uncles and cousins and
Well,
grandparents?
the luck that they had was that my husband's parents survived Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, so they were with us for a while until
they
they passed
survived.
away. And my husband also had 2 brothers and a sister that survived.
I see.
And the 2 brothers, we kept close, also with the sisters much.
So they
as-
have cousins. They have some extended
Yes,
family.
they do have some. We're all spread out. But we do keep in touch, of course.
And how did you tell the story? You and your husband tell the stories of your life under the Nazis to your children? Do they know?
Well,
you
they must
suffered?
know some of it. You know, they don't know the details really, but I think some of it they know that I was hiding and that my husband was hiding.
Was there ever any time when you were living with the family in Holland when you thought that you wouldn't make it? Were there difficult
Well,
times?
there
Were there
were
any bombings? Maybe you could tell us a little bit about
Oh.
the daily life.
The daily life happened to be many times that we thought that when it became dangerous, they used to warn us. Some village people just came and said it's dangerous now for hidden people, onderduikers they call them in Dutch. And we used to go into the woods sometimes for 2-3 days, even just to sleep and everything. We took some food and sometimes we didn't have anything. And just until it was clear again that she hung out a big sheet
Oh,
so that
my.
we know it was safe again and we could come back into the house.
Did the Nazis ever come into that little village town?
Well, they came, it was actually soldiers that came. And the soldiers, they didn't directly look for Jews. I heard in other places, not direct in our little place where we were, but
They
then
probably were looking for food.
they were looking for people that were hiding, but we were lucky never to be really. Oh, we've been changing places at times that we thought it was too dangerous to stay where we are, and we went away sometimes for 3 weeks into somebody else's house.
Oh, in the same village?
Yes, just to see if, you know, if they kept on looking for us.
Oh,
And
so, oh, I see. So there was some suspicion that,
Yes.
that there were Jews. So you
Yes.
went to someone else's house. Now, who was the family who took you in at that time?
That was usually some friends or some even one of my people's brother took us in for a while.
Very kind,
Oh yeah,
sensitive people.
they were very kind, and they really worked on this purpose.
And you never, did you have a radio? Did you know what was going on in the
We
outside
had
world?
we had a radio in a chicken coop, hidden, that we tried to listen to the news, the BBC.
Because you weren't supposed to have a radio
No, we weren't supposed to have anything.
So
no contact with the.
with the outside world. So toward the end of the war, toward 45, you began to have feelings that the
And I-
Nazis were being vanquished.
Defeated, yeah, but
Defeated.
you know, it was a very tough time until we got that far, because they were bombing and shelling every day, and they defended, they had to, they're trying to defend village for village, the Germans. They didn't just go away like that. And that was hard. Couple times we were bombed out. This last 2 weeks were the worst. You know, those bombings and shellings of that little village.
Was anybody killed during those bombings?
Yes, there were people killed in that little village.
After hiding out and living under that for so long.
Yeah, there were people, and some of the people from the village itself, too, were just killed. Yeah.
So you were fortunate to be able to do something, that you had a skill. And your husband, what was your husband doing this time? During the hiding period?
Well, he was helping the farmer.
Doing
A little
farm work?
A little bit farm work and a little bit woods we used to take in for the winter time. He used to help him with that. But he couldn't do too much because he had a back problem. And many times he was sick with his back and had to lay down, and had days and days that he was.
Where did they put you up? Did they have an extra bedroom?
They had a little attic room upstairs that we made into our bedroom. And we even built a hiding place in our bed. We had like a double thing. And one time, he and his brother was sitting in there for 12 hours because the Germans came into the house when on their way back Zurückzug, you know, they were quartered and came into the house, and that's where they were stationed. And he was 12 hours in this hiding place with his brother at the time. So dangerous.
It was very difficult. Did the brother live with the same family?
For a while, yes, we were together, the three of us.
So your husband's family, your husband's brothers survived.
Yes.
Oh, and the parents too, Bergen-Belsen.
Well,
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was one of very few people that the whole family survived.
That must have been a marvelous reunion when
Yes, it
when
was.
the parents came back.
It was also very, very difficult for my husband. But she told me much later, because I was the only survivor of our whole family, and he had everybody after the war, and it was difficult for him.
Must have had some sort of guilt.
Yes,
and of course he was not responsible at all.
No, not at all. But it was hard on him because he was with his whole family, and I was an only survivor.
But of course it was good for you that
it was good for me that I had this family.
That you had family.
That's right.
Now, when did you come to the in the United States, Ursula?
We came here in 1948. We didn't want to stay long there anymore.
You had had enough.
Yeah.
So how did you start that machinery?
Well, my husband
exiting?
had an uncle in Pittsburgh who made papers for him to come and for his whole family.
So you went directly to Pittsburgh?
No, we came to New York, actually. My mother-in-law was the first one who came to New York
By
with
herself?
one of her sons. And then we all came afterwards.
And how long did you live in New York?
Only 6 months. It was too hard with too little. I came with a 5-week-old baby.
Oh, your children were born
in Holland.
In Holland,
Mhm.
I see. And you had a
My
new baby.
oldest son, and I had a baby, yeah. I had 2 babies in this short time from 45 to 48 because we waited 5 years to have a child.
Right, that must
And we
have
wanted
been
children.
very difficult. for
And we came with 2 little children to this country. And from there on.
you. And how did you come to Buffalo?
My husband has uncles, also brothers of my mother-in-law in Toronto, in Canada, and he wanted to be close to family, so we chose to Buffalo.
So you chose
That's the
Buffalo. So you
club.
came to Buffalo in 1948.
49.
49. And did your husband continue on with his leather making business?
No, he tried. He did everything. No, he couldn't.
He couldn't do that.
No, he worked for a while, and then he tried to do a little business for himself. He liked to be in business for himself.
Is that what he does now?
But now he's actually retired.
Retired.
Mm-hmm.
How was it for you coming to a new country? You moved from Germany to Amsterdam and then to New York. What was it like for you?
After the war, it was very hard. When I was young, coming from Germany to Amsterdam, I was young and I had
You had your family.
my family, and then, but after the war, it was difficult. Very difficult. I found it very hard. Even I had Leo's family, which was good, because we lived very close with each other. But it was difficult because I had memories or whatever that pushed away the grief. I think it did a lot of harm.
You had to sublimate all the time and think of other things.
Yeah.
And your children, you mentioned before, one of your sons went back to visit your family to hear the story that they had heard a bit about.
Yeah.
What kind of reaction did they have?
Well, he was already a grown man, and he was 23. You know, and he was the oldest, and he was very mature. Always, I thought. So he was already married. He and his wife went back and saw the little house where we were hidden. And well, he was quite surprised how we survived.
How you managed.
Yeah.
Was
and
it a
people
small
were,
farm?
It was just a very small house. Very small, yeah.
How did the family respond to him?
Oh, they were just so wonderful that you can't imagine. The whole half a village came together to see him, because I went with him there after I had the baby, because they always wanted me to have a baby.
Oh, I see. And
so
you went to show off the baby.
Yeah. Before I left for America, I went to show him the baby. And he was at that time about 1.5 years, 2 years old. So then he came as a man, and he told him how grateful he was, what they had done for his parents.
Did you raise your children speaking Dutch?
Not really. That went away pretty fast. They do understand.
Well, how did your son communicate with the villagers?
It was difficult. One of the sons spoke a little bit English.
I see.
He said it was quite difficult because they do have a dialect on top of their Dutch.
Oh, so you have to understand that too.
That was difficult.
Is there any chance that the sons of the farmer and his wife may come to America?
I don't know. I only have been there twice since I lived here. Once was 8 years ago, and now again. We mentioned it at the time. He might want to do it someday.
That's
the youngest
amazing.
is the only courageous one that would like the other ones to know.
Well, they're from a village, and
Yeah,
I
and
suppose
there's-
that's very sheltering to live in a
Right.
small town.
Yeah. The youngest one is really the only one that might do it someday.
Well, that would be very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other stories that you'd like to tell us about of the time that you were either living in Germany or else in Amsterdam?
There's many stories. It's just little incidents that
Well, these incidences are important. Anything?
Well, we were very fortunate that we did get to this particular village where there were such kind people, because there were other parts where it was much more difficult, where the people didn't get along as well as we got along with our
that's
people.
of course something that we don't even think about.
Yes.
You have to interact well
In a small
in a small house, in a small area.
right, and that these people were really very devoted and to that purpose of saving us.
They might have thought originally that you were coming for a month or two. Little did anyone
Yeah,
know that it would go on for
anyone
years.
That's right, but they never wanted it any other way.
They never complained.
No.
Did any of the people who were hiding the Jews, after a while, get tired of this? It was a burden, a hardship. Did any of them turn in?
Never. This I
nothing?
have never experienced, but I do know it happened. But I didn't personally.
Unfortunately, you didn't,
No, I didn't.
know of it personally.
No, but I heard it happen. But the Netherlands, I have to say, was pretty good to the Jews.
To the Jews,
Yeah,
yes. That's what we hear, the Dutch and the Danish
Yeah.
were
Yeah,
among the few that stuck
that was a
their
very
necks out.
fortunate thing that made us survive, I think.
Did you see a movie about a woman by the name of Carrie, a Dutch woman, Carrie van Boon, a Christian woman who hid Jews and others? I can't think of the name right now.
She was an older woman
An
already when
older
they showed
woman.
her on TV.
Yes,
I
yes.
saw this movie.
I was
yes.
just wondering if it was authentic and whether you thought the story of Anna Frank, the way it was presented, could very well have taken
yes.
place in
Oh,
its
yes,
entirety.
definitely.
So you have a good
Definitely.
feeling there.
Also, the people, my neighbors from this little village were, the next door neighbors. So it was not, of course, not next door, because it was really in the sticks, and quite a few, maybe I would say 200 yards farther, there was the next house, and these people, they knew, but they were just wonderful. One time I got very sick. I caught diphtheria. And the doctor of the village was called, and he knew I was Jewish, and came and helped me. And the neighbors, they brought special, their fruits that they had canned, and eggs, so that I would be well taken care of.
It's a distinctive, different kind of people who could give so much with so little that they had.
That's right. And they always said, I wished you would have brought your parents here, not knowing that how I wished, because they were gone already. Your parents and your sisters, and were able to, we would have made do with everything.
And I'm sure they would have.
They would have.
They would have.
They would have.
Well, thank goodness that your husband's brother found this place, and
Yes.
that you survived, and that your husband did, and his family, and you brought two
Right, and
beautiful boys into the world.
And a daughter. I have a daughter.
You have a daughter. That I
Yes,
didn't know
have a
before. You
beautiful
have three
daughter.
children.
Yes, she lives in Chicago.
So you are a grandmother.
I have 3 grandchildren, 3 beautiful grandchildren.
So this story, I'm sure, will get told to the grandchildren as well eventually.
Yeah, I think so.
So we thank you very, very much. We know that it's difficult to tell these very sad stories, but for the people who watch them, we learn the stories and we appreciate what happened and we understand, and we can only hope and pray that it won't happen again.
And we hope that there's more people like the people that were hiding us in this world.
Thank you very much,
You're
Ursula.
welcome.